In our story today, we'll see what happens when Hercules goes to Apollo to ask for more guidance or more advice. Remember, Apollo is the god of light, poetry, and music, but he is also known for being the god of wisdom and truth. Do you think that Apollo will have good advice for Hercules? At the end of our last lesson, we heard the line, "So Hercules set out once more, never guessing that his most remarkable adventures and his greatest glory still lay before him." In our story today, called Other Adventures of Hercules, what do you think is going to happen? What kind of adventures do you think Hercules is going to have? Accurate. Accurate means factual, true, and without error. If you don't study for your spelling quiz, you will not be able to produce an accurate spelling for all of the words. Immeasurable. Immeasurable means impossible to measure. My grandfather always says that his love for me is immeasurable. Trample. Trample means to stomp or beat down with the feet. We were careful to walk between the rows in the garden so that we did not trample the strawberry plants. Reputation. A reputation is other people's general opinion of a person. Ayana had a reputation for always doing her best in class. Guidance. If you offer someone guidance, you are giving them advice or helping them make a decision. Without guidance at the pet store, Joshua felt like he wouldn't be able to decide which pet to buy. In our last read aloud, Theseus gave Hercules some guidance or advice. What was Theseus's guidance for Hercules? Right, Theseus told Hercules that he should go talk to Apollo. As Hercules journeyed across Greece, he thought about what his friend Theseus had told him. You will never be free of the past until you have worked away your guilt and mastered your temper and your great strength. Go ask Apollo, the god of wisdom and truth, how to do these things. And remember always, you have a friend who believes in you. Hercules traveled up into the mountains until he reached Delphi, where there was a famous temple built to honor the god Apollo. In a cave behind this temple sat a priestess. When someone asked her a question, she would go into a trance, as if she were asleep, and Apollo would speak through her. The words would come from her mouth, with her voice, but the Greeks believed they were really Apollo's words. Hercules asked for Apollo's guidance, and the answer came back. Go to King Eurystheus, and do as he commands. Thus began perhaps the most famous of Hercules' many adventures. King Eurystheus sent the hero out to perform the most difficult tasks he could think of, 12 in all, and these daring deeds became known as the labors of Hercules. A labor is a job or a task, so Hercules has 12 jobs to do. What do you think some of those labors might be? The first of these labors that King Eurystheus commanded Hercules to complete involved a large and dangerous animal. King Eurystheus was a small man, and he paced nervously back and forth in front of his throne as he spoke to the huge Hercules, who stood listening. In another part of Greece, known as Nemea, the king began, there lives a dangerous lion. You, Hercules, shall subdue the lion, so he won't ever hurt anyone again. I am told that the lion's hide, or skin, is magical. No material known to man, such as metal, stone, or wood, can cut that lion's skin. You will have to think of another way to stop it." Bowing, Hercules said, "I do not know how I can do this, but I will try." Do you think that Hercules will be successful in subduing the lion? However, as he left the throne room, Hercules thought, "Perhaps this story is not accurate. Perhaps the hunters simply have not gotten close enough to shoot their arrows at the lion. But I will bring my own bow and arrows, as well as my heavy stone club." Hercules journeyed to Nemea, and at last found the fierce animal out in the forest, sleeping in the midday heat. Hercules moved forward until he had a clear view of the beast. Then the hero drew an arrow from his quiver and set the end to the string of his bow. Drawing back the string, he took careful aim and then let go, but the arrow simply bounced right off of the lion. Its hide was indeed magical. The lion was unhurt, but it still felt the blow. It awoke and leapt to its feet, roaring with rage, and then charged at Hercules. Throwing down his bow and arrows, the hero stood waiting, his heavy stone club in his hand. When the lion leapt at him, Hercules simply stepped to the side and let the lion sail right past him. Then Hercules struck with his club, which would have been powerful enough to knock down an elephant. But the Nemean lion, protected by its magical hide, did not suffer terribly from the impact. It only sank to the ground for a moment, stunned. The club, however, had shattered into 100 pieces. Knowing that in a moment the large cat would leap to attack again, Hercules turned and leapt upon the lion's back. Then Hercules reached forward and grabbed the lion's front paws so that it could not turn them against Hercules. The furious beast rolled onto its back and tried to shake him off. But Hercules' strength was too much, and he was able to subdue the lion. Catching his breath, Hercules thought, "The report was true. The lion's hide protected it from my club and arrows. If I could wear it, it would provide me protection against swords and arrows. How can I possibly do this?" After trying many ways to get the hide off of the lion, Hercules had a brilliant idea. He lifted one of the lion's paws from the ground and used the lion's own claws to cut the hide. That is how Hercules slew the Nemean lion and succeeded in completing the first of his 12 labors for King Eurystheus. King Eurystheus smiled at the large man in the lion skin who stood before his throne. "Hercules," said the king, "I have another labor for you to attempt or try. I want you to bring me 3 of the golden apples of the Hesperides." This startled even Hercules. "But your majesty, those 3 magical sisters live beyond any land to which humans have ever traveled. According to stories, in the middle of their garden is a tree from which there grow apples of real gold. The sisters keep the location secret, for otherwise people would constantly trample the place just to get to the gold. How am I to bring you these apples if no one even knows where they are or if they even exist?" The king shrugged. "If it were easy, Hercules, I would not need you. Now go." What do you think? Do you think this labor is more difficult than the Nemean lion? Hercules used his muscles in his last task. Do you think he'll need to use his muscles or his brain more for this one? So Hercules, who had traveled throughout the known world, now set sail for the unknown world. He sailed west, and after searching in vain for several weeks, he thought, there must be a better way to find the Hesperides. Suddenly, he grinned. Wait a moment. I cannot find them myself, but I know where to find someone who might be able to help. You see, the Hesperides were the daughters of the biggest and strongest of all the giants, Atlas. The giants used to rule the world before Zeus became king of the gods. After Zeus became king, he punished Atlas for fighting against him by having him stand and hold the entire sky on his massive shoulders, so that it would not fall down upon the earth. This is how the ancient Greeks explained how and why the sky, the stars, and the moon remained above them. Is there really a person who holds up the sky, though? No, today we know that that is fictional. Hercules journeyed until he found a range of enormous mountains. In the middle of them stood Atlas, bent beneath the weight of the sky. Hercules shouted, "Hello, Atlas!" Atlas squinted downward, calling in a deep voice, "Who is there?" "It is I, Hercules. I have come to ask a favor." Then Hercules explained his mission to clear his reputation as a man of bad temper, ending with his request, "I hoped you might direct me to your daughters and their garden." Atlas replied, "I would gladly do so, but my daughters made me promise never to tell anyone where it is. I cannot break a promise, not even for you, Hercules. I would get you the apples myself, but I dare not set down the sky." Thinking for a moment, Hercules said, "I am nowhere near your size, Atlas, but you know that I am strong. Perhaps I can hold the sky while you go and get the 3 apples that I need." Atlas had stood unmoving for so long that now even his ideas moved slowly. Finally, he agreed. Warning: brace yourself, Hercules. Even you have never held a weight such as this one. Slowly, the giant lowered himself to his knees and transferred onto Hercules' shoulders the weight of the entire sky and everything in it. Even Hercules, strong as he was, staggered a bit. Then he found his balance and said, "I have it now. Hurry back, Atlas." The giant strode away with mile-long steps. For a long time, Hercules stood bent beneath that immeasurable load. At last, Atlas returned and showed Hercules the golden apples. But to Hercules' horror, Atlas told him, "I have held the sky almost from the beginning of time, and until today I could never set it down. Now that I know someone else is strong enough to take over the job, I will take the apples to your king." Do you think that Atlas will come back if Hercules lets him take the apples to King Eurystheus? Hercules did not like this idea at all. Knowing how slowly Atlas thought, however, the hero answered, "I did not know I would be holding the sky for so long a time, Atlas, so I was not careful enough when I took it from you. There seems to be a planet rubbing against the back of my neck, and it is starting to hurt. I am afraid I might drop the sky. Before you go, please get the blanket from my pack over there and slip it between my neck and that planet." Atlas tried, but his hands were so large that he could not get the blanket out of the pack. So Hercules suggested, "Take back the sky just long enough for me to set the blanket in place." He handed the load back to the giant. As soon as Atlas held the sky once more, Hercules said, "I am sorry, Atlas, but it was you that Zeus chose to hold the sky. Thank you for bringing me the apples." Atlas sighed, realizing Hercules had turned his own trick back against him. I suppose it is only fair. Well, Hercules, come back and visit old Atlas again sometime. So Hercules took the apples to the king, completing another labor, and Atlas never set down the sky again. Hercules completed all 12 of his labors after defeating the Nemean lion and retrieving the golden apples. Once he did, he was free to leave the service of King Eurystheus. He once again traveled all over Greece, completing many heroic deeds. But this time, he was always thanked for them. How do you think Hercules feels now compared to how he felt at the beginning of his story? I think he's probably feeling much better.
Alright, we have finished reading about Hercules and all of his other adventures. He went on a lot of adventures in our read aloud today. At the beginning of our read aloud, the very first thing he did was talk to the god Apollo. What advice did Apollo give Hercules? What did he tell him to do? Apollo sent him to the king Eurystheus and told him to do whatever the king commanded. What did King Eurystheus tell Hercules to do? Did he tell Hercules he had just one job for him? No, he told him that he had 12 difficult tasks for him to complete. These are known as the 12 labors of Hercules. Why do you think that Hercules obeys the king? What do you think? There's a lot of reasons that might explain it. What one do you think? Did he do it because he wanted to improve himself? Did he do it because he felt guilty about his temper? Or just because Apollo told him to? What do you think? We learned about a couple of those 12 labors of Hercules. What was the first one that we talked about? What did he have to do? He had to subdue the Nemean lion. What made the Nemean lion so hard to subdue or to beat? What was it about that lion that made him so tough? That lion had a magical hide that could not be pierced with regular weapons, and he could not be hurt. How did Hercules defeat the lion? Right, he used the lion's own claws, his own magical claws, to slice through the hide. What was his second labor that we talked about today? He had to bring back the golden apples of the Hesperides, 3 magical sisters. For this one, did he have to use his physical strength, or did he have to use his brain? Or did he use both? I think he probably used both. Now, getting some apples from 3 sisters doesn't sound very hard, but what made this such a difficult task? No one knows where the Hesperides live, or where the apples are, or if they even existed. Who did Hercules go to ask? Right, he asks Atlas. Atlas doesn't want to go at first. Atlas makes Hercules hold up the sky for him. How does Hercules get Atlas to take the sky back from him? What does he do? And was he able to succeed and get the apples? Alright, my friends, before we move on to our assignment, I want to talk about the word Herculean. Herculean is an adjective that can describe a job or a task that you have to do. If your job or task is Herculean, do you think that it's really easy and you could do it super fast? No, a Herculean task or a Herculean effort is one that takes a great amount of strength and patience and hard work. All right, my friends, go ahead and open up the PDF attached to this assignment, and I will tell you what we are going to do next.
All right, in our last lesson, we made a plan for our own Greek myth. Today, we are going to work on the second step in the writing process. We already did our first step, our planning. Our second step is to draft. When we're drafting, we're going to take all of the information that we put on our planning guide and turn it into a narrative or a story. So to complete today's assignment, you will need a copy of your draft that you created in our last lesson. To create your draft, you have two options for today's assignment. You can use this page to write your draft on, which is just blank, or you may choose to use this one, our second page on our assignment, that has some guiding words to begin your sentences. If this is helpful to you to have those guiding words, feel free to use this one, but if you would like to just start on a blank page, you may use that first one. As you're writing your draft, remember that your first sentence, the job of your first sentence, is to describe the characters and the setting. When your audience reads that first sentence, they should know where the story takes place and when, and who the characters of the story are. Your second sentence should explain what happens in the beginning of the story. What happens at the very beginning of your myth, or how does your story start out? Your second sentence should explain what happens in the middle. What sort of problems do your characters run into, and how do they solve those problems? And your last sentence should explain what happens at the end. This will wrap up your story and explain what your characters did and whether they were successful in achieving their goals. In a Greek myth, because myths are often used to explain how things happen in nature, you could also include that in your ending. What does your myth explain? If you choose to use this page, those are already guided for you. Long ago, there was your character who lived where. One day, something happened at the beginning of the story. Then, something happened in the middle. After that, something happened at the end. And that is why or how something happens in nature. Remember, you can use either this blank page or this one that has those guiding beginnings of sentences for you. You choose which one you are more comfortable using as you write a draft of your myth. When you are finished with this draft, just like in our last assignment, you will want to keep a copy of this. Whether you print it or take a picture or save it as a digital file, however you would like to, but you will need to look back at this in our next lesson. So before you submit it or turn it in, make sure that you still have a copy of it. All right, my friends, I am excited to read these drafts for your myths and to work on them in our next lesson.